Your audio, two things on the background that is there. There's like a halo around you. So if you can change the background or anything, because every time you move, there's something happening behind your head.
There's a background which is given by the organizers. That's why it's there.
I know, but I don't know how that will look.
Let me remove it actually. Check. Just give me a second.
Also, your audio is a little soft.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Hi,
Hello,
Ruchi.
sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hi,
Hello, sir.
hi.
We will be beginning with the panel that is Masters with Unicorn shortly after joining all the panelists.
Yeah, sure. Sujit, hi, this is Ruchi Bhatia from ET Now. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hi, Ruchi. I'm audible. It's fine, or
Yes. If you can just, so it's slightly soft. So every time you'll move, your audio will be, it kind of becomes soft. So you will have to either speak loudly, or if there's a mic, then use that.
I'll make sure that my voice will be loud and clear.
Okay, good. Works for us then.
Hi, Sai.
Is this better now?
Hi, Sujit.
Let
Hi,
me
Rohit.
check. Rohit, it's better. Sai, hi, this is Ruchi Bhatia from ET Now. Is my voice reaching you?
Yeah, loud and clear. Good to meet you, Ruchi.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you very much for joining in.
My pleasure.
So we're just waiting for Amit to join in, and I think then we can begin.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm sure all of you saw the email that I had sent. Basically, since we're talking to students, we're largely going to keep it about how should startups, how should budding entrepreneurs basically, and the ones who are looking to start up should look at things. Also, I was thinking we'll focus on some of the challenges and uncertainties that COVID brought to the fore. Talk about a little bit of startup runway capital. Talk about funding, and talk about how digitization has been boosted due to COVID in a big way. Some of the trends that you guys saw during COVID, some of your learning experiences that you can share with everybody here at SRCC. Does that work for all of you?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Yeah.
So because we have 45 minutes and we have about 4 panelists, just try to keep pack in a lot in your answers, but try and keep it, not very long.
Totally. You'll get it. Will try my best to be succinct.
Rohit, your audio is still slightly soft. So if you can...
I think this is a platform issue because I'll try and be loud. Is this better?
Yeah. Actually, if you're loud, then it works.
Okay, fine. So Ruchi, how are you seeing things on the lockdown, all this? What news are you picking up?
The Prime Minister held another meeting today on the COVID situation. So definitely a cause of worry with the COVID rising. But one thing is for sure that there's not going to be another lockdown. at least not on the national front. We may see a more localized kind of lockdowns, but nothing on the national front. I'm hoping that they open up the vaccination now for a lot more other people. But I was talking to Dr. Guleria of AIIMS, and he was saying that opening vaccination for all is also a factor of how many doses are available. And I don't think our capacity-wise we're there yet to open it up for all. And I think the double mutant strain that we have here in India is one of the ones that is a bigger cause of worry. Look at the numbers that we're seeing in Maharashtra, 50,000 cases. Hi, Amit. Good to speak with you. I'm Ruchi Bhatia from ET Now.
Hi, Ruchi. What's up?
Very well.
Hi, Sujit sir.
Hi, Amit. How are you? Long time.
All your fellow panelists as well, and I was just talking to them about what are we looking to focus on. It's a 45-minute discussion, so we are hoping that we can give all of you equal opportunity to talk and talk about your experiences about building startups, the kind of issues and challenges that you faced in your early days, how to maneuver through uncertainties, and COVID, of course, was a big one. So talk about some of these things and also to touch upon some of the, other issues, for example, your IPO plans, for example, newer markets that you're looking at focusing on, the big boost towards digitization. So these are some of the areas that we're going to touch upon. I request all of you to keep your answers not very long, but try to fit in as much as you can in your answers.
So, hello, ma'am. Since here all the panelists are here, so we can start with.
Will you give me a cue, or are we just going to begin?
I'm giving you an introduction. I would like to introduce all the panelists and you. FICCI, India's largest and oldest business organization, FICCI Young Leaders Forums presents an illuminating discussion on startups in a masterclass with unicorns. With immense pride and vigor, we introduce the esteemed panel, Mr. Amit Chaudhary, the co-founder of Lenskart, Mr. Rohit Kapoor, CEO of OYO India and Southeast Asia, Mr. Sai Srinivas, the co-founder and the CEO of Mobile Premier League, Mr. Sujit Kumar, co-founder of Udaan. The session will be moderated by Ms. Ruchi Bhatia, journalist and deputy bureau chief of the Economic Times Now. Thank you all the panelists and Ms. Ruchi Bhatia for joining us here. Now I would like to pass over to Ms. Ruchi ma'am to take us through the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much for all joining in today and tuning into this masterclass with unicorns. I'm Ruchi Bhatia from ET Now, and I hope to make your Sunday afternoon worthwhile with all the eminent panelists who are joining in. Sujit Kumar, co-founder of Udaan, Amit Chaudhary, co-founder of Lenskart, Sai Srinivas Kiran, co-founder and CEO of Mobile Premier League, and of course, Rohit Kapoor, the CEO, India and Southeast Asia at OYO. Gentlemen, appreciate you all taking your time out and speaking with us and speaking with all the students here at SRCC as well. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll of course be talking about ideas for budding startups, challenges that one faces, when you're starting out, nurturing ideas, raising funding, advice to budding entrepreneurs, and many more other issues as well. So Amit, let me first begin by you, and you're talking about your journey at Lenskart that started almost about 10 years ago with a simple idea of solving an everyday problem. There are about 60 crore people in India, who cannot really see properly. So talk to us about your journey from selling contact lenses to now a company that has complete backward integration in the eye care market. You, of course, have a full stack business of manufacturing. You own technology, supply chains, own your retail as well.
Yeah. No, first of all, thanks, Ruchi, FICCI team, SRCC for having me here. It's a privilege. I still remember 2013 was the first time I attended one of this event of business conclave, and after 8 years, things have changed a lot. But yeah, great privilege to be back here. Just for our journey, of course, we are a lifestyle brand. 10 years into this journey, we started with a simple fundamental of empowering the vision problem which is there in India, and how can we solve that in a full stack way. Over the last 10 years, the whole idea was that if we want to do it and solve this, we have to own the entire stack. It cannot be something which could be outsourced in bits and pieces. And how can we do that? So if you look at our journey, of course, you will see a lot of progression and a lot of milestone over the last 10 years. The first was, of course, choosing the category right. And when we have chosen a category which has almost 35 crore people which don't even have access to it, that was the first point. And when you don't have access to it, which means that there is a market which consumers are not even getting the access for, and for that you have to create that access. And how do you create that access is first going and understanding the category. So that was the first for us. None of our fathers have been into this business, so it was almost like learning it from the scratch. The second of course was that while we are building this, do we want to do this like a trading business or a mechanism where it is enabling via e-commerce or via stores, but or really solving the consumer problem by taking the problem in hand. And that is what we tried to focus. And that was our second milestone, where we chose the category, but also chose to do manufacturing from day zero, where we say that we will not only sell, but we'll also manufacture, because that is how you will control the end product, what you're giving to the consumer. That is the first 5 years of our existence. Of course, that was a time when we used to say that we will only be online because that is who we are. We are an internet commerce business. But things started, I would say, in the journey of creating this, it became more interesting when we started realizing that the problem what we are trying to solve is giving access of vision to people. But that cannot happen if you don't know the vision of people, right? And you have to do eye checkups. And that is where our whole idea of getting home eye checkups or opening stores came into existence. So the last 4 years, we have opened 700 stores across 200 cities in India. And we are enabling almost like 20,000, 25,000 eye checkups a day. And that is where our business has grown, but also consumers now know us, that we are as an organization giving a full-fledged end-to-end service, and not only just one part of the business where somebody is either giving a frame or somebody is giving a lens. So that is what our journey has been.
Right. So, while we're talking about solving a problem, let me take it across to Rohit. Rohit, you've been in the business for a very long time. You're not just the CEO of OYO, but you've invested in a lot of startups, for example, Fraternity, Mosaic Brands, Tijori as well. When you're going through that initial hustle of being an entrepreneur, what are some of the key things that you should be looking at? For example, Amit talked about choosing the category right. How important is that? And what are some of the other factors that one must keep in mind?
Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you. First of all, great to be at SRCC. I was not a very diligent student. Always wanted to get into a college like SRCC, but couldn't make it. So feels just good to be on this panel for that simple reason, right? But to your very complicated question, Ruchi, my simple answer is, if you're starting up, I think 3 or 4 things are invaluable. One is figuring out enough cash for 6 months, because more than that, you don't have visibility ever. But that is helpful to know that 6 months you can fund the business somehow, beg, borrow, steal. Second is to be extremely valuable to someone, while knowing if you prove that to be right, there's a wide TAM, target market, available to you, right? But don't need to go after the entire target market at that point in time. But just prove the value to someone at that point in time incredibly well. And your first few partners or customers should be absolute fans. They should be talking in social circles about what they just saw, or what a great team or product, etc. And third is, at whatever point of journey you are on, whether you're starting up or you're $10 billion, be kind and humble to people around you, right? You need all the goodwill in the world to create a large business over a multi-decadal business. And it is not obvious when things are going very well, but it becomes very obvious when things are not going so well, right? And that's a lesson that I've seen. I did a startup 20 years back, which closed down in 2 years, but I've worked with enough promoters and founders over time and closely observed these 3 or 4 things, which I personally value a lot. But there could be a million ideas which are as good.
Oh, you have to be humble and nimble-footed, and there are no two ways about it. Having said that, Sujit, if I can come to you, you guys have built a business by entering into a very very tough space. Uran, for example, is working to gain the trust of the traditional traders. So talk to us about some of the early lessons that helped you guys to crack some of the very basics with traders. For example, transparency, accessibility, affordability, and a wider national reach as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ruchi. Thanks, SRCC, and thanks, Vicky, for building this organizing this event. Definitely, this is Sunday, and I think the COVID time every day is same, so I don't think so that makes a difference. But first of all, I would like to, before answering your query, I would like to give my background. So almost like 14 years I'm in startup world, am I right? I was the part of Flipkart, founded by Sachin and Vinny, but I've joined them as a third person in 2003. Almost from scratch, we have built that. I was with the Flipkart for 7.5 years, building B2C, seeing that still that's the largest company and we are very happy. Still, I'm the stakeholder, so also happy by creating value, money on that front. But after leaving Flipkart, when I've decided to move on, because prior to that, I was not thinking about our B2B commerce, or I must say that that's a Bharat ka commerce, e-commerce.
Yeah.
That's why I say that, because still 5% of the, less than 5% of e-commerce in B2C. 95% commerce happen through these offline mom and pop stores. They are divided various like A, B, C, D, E. I'm not going into that. So solving something in that space of 95%, that's why I call it Bharat ka e-commerce. And why I also call it Bharat ka e-commerce, there's nothing like when we are building Flipkart, it was termed as we are building Amazon of India. I think something we are very proud when we build this model, people are calling might be it's Udan of Indonesia, Udan of Bangladesh, Pakistan. So I think that's the another pride I take. Let's come to your original question. Fundamentally, when we see in 2015-16, there are lots of infrastructural and reform was happening in the country. So
Right.
Infrastructural change like internet penetration was going very fast. So in 2008, I must say that 2010, when we were doing B2C and Flipkart, around 8 to 10 million were the internet users. We have to understand that. By 2016, it was in hundreds of millions.
Right.
So most of these people in businesses, all the people will started using the internet because of the the cost has been reduced drastically. It was the cheapest in the world, if I'm not wrong. Second, the reform has happened, GST. So one country, one tax. So when we were doing the supply chain in Flipkart, every
Right.
state has a different kind of rule. There is an entry tax, this form, that form. You cannot carry the bulk. You have to, and those are. It's almost like impossible to scale the whole business. Though we have definitely scaled, but it was not easy. Rather than very very difficult. So GST has given different platform where you can think India as a India rather than state wise or city wise or some region wise. So
Right.
that's these two changes has enabled. And third, which was internet fundamentally solved the most
True.
unorganized. Like when we say that there are 30 million retailers which are serving these hundreds and hundreds millions of customers. So internet provide that power where it can be organized. So that's why we have started Udan. Yeah.
So I will be talking about, of course, Bharat ka e-commerce, the whole digitization bit in just a bit. But let me also take it across to Sai Srinivasan. Sai, we're seeing that big investors are making a beeline for the Indian gaming sector, and it has really come up in a huge, huge way. So talk to us about, when you started out, some of the challenges that you faced and where things are headed now for the sector as a whole.
Sure. I think firstly, I'm extremely privileged to have started out at a time when payments, data, mobile phones, everything were there. Like for it was literally right place, right time. So very lucky to have started at that time. But I think when we started, gaming in India was still not mainstream. Most of these investors or most of the VCs were of the opinion that there's some kinds of gaming that will do well, some kinds of gaming that won't do well. It was also proven, well, not proven, but it was also a thing that Indian customers won't pay to participate in games and so on and so forth. I think what's changed in the last 2.5 years is the fact that this massive 300-400 million customer base in India, thanks to UPI, can now pay even as low as 3 rupees, 4 rupees, 5 rupees, and participate in any game, right? So India's strength is strength in numbers. So instead of taking like 1,000 rupees from say 1 million customers, India is all about taking 5 rupees from like say 100 million customers, and that's what's happening in gaming. So the other big change that you'll see happening in gaming is that India will change from a country which has traditionally been a service provider to a country which will be IP creator, right? The moment India as a country starts becoming an IP creator, then the value that it will create will be 10x more, because IP tends to live on. For example, Walt Disney created Mickey Mouse, I don't know, 100 years back. Even till date, people are still licensing that product. So that's the beauty of IP. So I think in the next 10 years, some of the folks even listening here would end up creating a lot of IP, and that IP will be extremely valuable. I think that's the big difference.
Rohit, if I can come to you, as much as it is about being at the right time, at the right place, with the right kind of reform environment, it is also about the right idea, and also something that you pointed out, having the right kind of money and having enough startup runway as well. So talk to us about how important is that initial bit of money that you have and how you use it, when you're just starting out.
Yeah. So I think the initial money, and I'm not talking crores, it could be lakhs and a few lakhs as well to start up, and depends on what you need at that point in time. It's the life of every entrepreneur to keep looking for the money for the business growth. It can come from your own cash flows, or it can come from external sources. But the reality is you do need it, right? As you grow the business. So many entrepreneurs often say, oh, so much of my time goes in, raising funding and meeting investors. It's not a good use of my time. Well, if you have a team of co-founders, maybe one person takes that job. It is a job to be done, a story to be told, and money to be raised. If you are lucky to raise it from your own cash flows, absolutely the best. If you can get debt, take debt. But planning for that is important. I think the second thing is, over a period of time, the color of money also becomes important.
Right.
Where does the money come from? Not initially, because you can't be choosing everything at that point, but over time, the color of money, because what comes with it is sponsorship. What comes with it is expertise, mentors, well-wishers, and it takes a village to raise a child. A startup or a large business is as similar, right? So that's how I will put it. And so having an eye on that is super important, and SRCC is the right college to say this.
So, while of course money is a big challenge, let me take it across to Amit. Amit, for example, the eye care market, extremely fragmented with mom and pop stores leading the charge, and yet you were able to create a new category in this space, and you continue to capture a large part of this market even today. So talk to us about some of the early year challenges that you overcame, and of course your experience during that time.
I think the first thing, I think if I just link it back to entrepreneurship and how do you link it to the idea, the first thing which comes is that how do you create a team? And I think taking some cues from what Rohit was saying, at the end of the day, if you have a set of people who believe in that, the notion of creating something which is meaningful, I think market and market ratio and funding, all that will continue to happen, and there will be responsibilities which will be shared across the team. But the core thing is that how do you create that team which has the same goals, and with that will come the market understanding and market share, even category expansion, product expansion. Like for an example, what we brought to the market was probably not access what we brought to the market, that you can wear these glasses and still look sexy in it, right? It is not a curse. It is not something you're wearing it because you have been born with a disease, right? We made it fashion from a medical equipment, so it's not medical anymore. So when you bring about that fundamental change in the thought process of how you want to sell, you're not only impacting the internal teams who are probably marketing that, but also as a community of the people wearing it. Today people want to sport this. When we started out the business, we couldn't have imagined that today 25% of our consumers would be buying a zero power glasses, because it is part of their attire now. It's part of their personality. It is their face. And how do you do that is, of course, with a lot of conviction with the inner team, where they first need to start believing in it, and then they want to transmit it to the audience. When I couldn't have ever imagined where a Bollywood actor for the entire movie would have been wearing especially if a female actor would be wearing it. But bringing that change and then taking the market share is a different way of doing it.
Sai, if I can come to you, and while we're talking about the challenges, it's not just the money challenge, but sometimes a mindset challenge as well, as has been highlighted by Amit. So, in your journey when you were starting out the Mobile Premier League, what were some of the challenges or some of the hurdles that you came across? Whether it can be at the time when you started out or at the funding level.
Sure. I think for us, we were very lucky to have, VCs back us right at the beginning. But I think for us, one of the biggest problems was we as MPL distribute our product not on the Play Store. We distribute it directly to the end customers, right? Of course, we're there on the App Store. I think building a brand large enough where people can trust you and people can use your product, download and install your product, not being on the Play Store, was a significant challenge. And to be honest, one of the things that I realized from it is that if there is a business which has a product market fit, and if there is a business where you're fundamentally providing something to the customers and which the customers enjoy, then even if you put it really doesn't matter whether it's in the Play Store, outside the Play Store, whether there are 15 speed breakers before the customer can get to it. But if there is a product that fundamentally customers like, they will figure out a way to get there. And your job is to basically build a brand trustworthy enough and large enough that customers can identify you. So I think that was a big challenge. Sorry.
Was about how did you overcome the Play Store challenge, like just getting getting MPL onto that platform?
Right. I think one very bold move we made bang at the beginning was that we started our company, I think, in July 2018. We launched our product in September 2018. Mm-hmm. I think we made a very bold move of signing Virat Kohli as our brand ambassador in October 2018 or November 2018. And we then capped that up with an even bolder move of actually investing in a large brand campaign during IPL for a company that was like roughly 5-6 months old. I think that was a bit of it was too big a campaign, to be honest. I think we somehow managed to pull that off. But what it ended up doing for us was that it suddenly created this entire thing about, hey, you know what? There is this product, there is this gaming app, and you can install this gaming app, and you need to go to the website and do it. And that building a brand sometimes means that you got to take some really, really tough calls, and you got to take some really bold calls. Like, even Lenskart, I think one of the incredible things about them is that the brand that they've built over the last 10 years is just incredible, right? Like, today, if you have anything to do with eyewear, you probably go to the Lenskart shop or to their website. I think if anybody's in the business of consumer products, I think what one of the things apart from technology, apart from product, apart from IP, one of the biggest moats that you can build in the longer term is a brand. So I think that was one of the biggest advantages we had.
Oh, absolutely. Sujit, if I can come to you, while we're talking about some of the earlier challenges, you cater to the underserved tier 2 and tier 3 cities. How did you go about, with the right kind of messaging and telling the traders that, yes, we are here to help you and not take your business away?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, like I said, when you are solving for Bharat, I think definitely it's beyond top 20 cities. Am I right? And why I believe, because when we were doing our B2C in early days, and I don't know the current number, but most of the sales, like more than 80%, were coming from top 10 cities or 15 cities. When we have decided that to go there, there are a reason for it. Almost all beyond these cities, the supply chain distributions are broken. So there are multiple layers which add inefficiency. And it's not like they don't understand. They understand, hey, I'm getting, let's say, clothing retailer. They understand I'm getting the stuff from Surat or Ahmedabad or Mumbai or Delhi, but they also knows I have to go through 2 or 3 layers. So a smallest city, let's say in Bengal, Murshidabad, they knows that I have to go to Calcutta. Calcutta has to go to Ahmedabad or Surat. So there are 2 or 3 layers, right? Or let's say smallest city in the smallest town in Bihar, they know that I have to go through 2 or 3 layers. So first of all, giving them, we have started very softly to understand what are their pain points, right? To solve that pain point, creating those products, sometimes supporting with the feet on the street kind of thing, but not giving them comfort. Hey, they are salesmen. No, they are wanted to train them. Hey, you can order, you can get the stuff at your door. First of all, they were very amazed by that. And they started checking with the 5%, 10% of their purchase. And you should also understand the biggest difference in B2B and B2C. In B2B, you have to develop a relationship, trust, because through which they are earning. So you cannot, it's not like, hey, you are selling 10,000 rupees goods, you are giving 20% discount, and the customer jump over, doesn't matter which platform is giving, they buy. You have to create that visibility. Why you are giving this 8,000? Will you supply continuously? Because this is not the one-time purchase. Every time you have to give them. So the creating those discounting will not help. Creating those trust. Hey, I will supply you in 2 or 3 days. Then those infrastructure supply chain you are building or not. So there are a hell lot of things. Say, hey, are you giving me financing or not? Creditor. So we are building, let's say, supply chain, logistic, financing, selection, right pricing, right kind of service to that region.
Right.
So this is a full-fledged, and e-commerce or any of the commerce, these are very, very in-depth capability games, and this takes number of years to solve. We say that everything they can buy from the platform, but I think it's very very important to understand. So you have to build those capability which are offline also, like sourcing, warehousing, last mile, middle mile.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, that, you have to look at some of the niche areas as well. Having said that, Rohit, when we were speaking and you spoke about funding as well, when you're in OYO, you must be reaching out to VCs, and on the other hand, you're investing in startups as well. Talk to us about how does it work? What are some of the things that one must keep in mind when you're going and trying to get funding, and what really plays in the mind of maybe a VC at that point of time? Some of the things that you must keep in your checklist.
Yeah. So let me talk in general, because OYOs are a different phase of evolution now and may not be really relevant. I think it boils down to what Amit was saying. There are 2 or 3 simple things I think VCs always look at, and that's the thing to understand. One is definitely initial money comes to the person, not even the idea, right? So if there's an idea versus a founder's strength, the initial judgment is on how good the founder is, because the reality is most businesses pivot 5 or 10 times before they land to the ultimate model, right? That's number one. Second is the question, can this person work with more people or attract more good, talented people to work with her, right? That's the second thing. The third thing I'll say is, then comes to the idea, saying, is the idea good enough? And if this idea works, is there a large enough business which can be built? Because look, at the end of the day, there are many kinds of VCs, so it's not good to generalize, because there are VCs, for example, in the social space, also. But by and large, VC industry works on 3 or 4 out of 10 being multi-baggers. But the initial bet has to be that the one I'm putting money behind could be potentially a multi-bagger at some point in time, right? So those are 3 or 4 simple things I think they look for. But over time, I think, trust me, most strong founders, great people do find the money. So if you're not finding the money, trying to introspect rather than, say that, I have a great idea, I'm a great guy, but nobody seems to be listening to me.
Sai, is it going to be a strong ideas or a strong founder? Where does your vote go?
I think the idea. So the idea is more market linked, right? Like if you were to look at a market like as a river, right? If you have a good idea, then it's like rowing a boat in a downstream river, right? Even if the founder is okay, the boat will still keep rowing because it's a downstream river. But if the idea is poor, it's like rowing a boat upstream. So if the founder's not okay, then the boat isn't going to move, right? So it's like, but if the founder is great, and even if the idea is upstream, then the founder more often than not realizes that, hey, you know what, I have to turn the boat around and go downstream, right? So that's one way of looking at it, right? But in markets where the idea is the idea is a great market, but also the founding team and the set of people that are working on that is great. Then you get to see business value being created very, very fast, right? An incredible amount of market cap being created very, very fast. So I think for everyone, I think to what Rohit said, I think it's always better to find an idea that has a large market rather than going about the other way around, where you have an idea and hope that there is a market, right? Because the market's not going to listen to anyone, not to the investors, not to you. The market is the market.
Oh, absolutely. That's of course one side of it. Amit, if I can come to you, once you do have the money coming in from VCs, it's also about how well you spend it. For example, what Lenskart did many years ago was not use the money to acquire customers. Instead, you put your money behind a complete backward integration. So what fuels that kind of decision making?
I think again, linking it back from the consumer. When you link things back from the consumer, it becomes easy to take these decisions that you want to utilize the you have one set of money, you want to utilize that to probably end up spending on Google and Facebook, or do you want to spend up giving the right product to the consumer? So, we were born in the era where almost everybody was getting funded, 2010, 11, like in the idea versus founder debate, we were just 23-year-old people, where a VC entered our premise thinking that the idea is brilliant and they need to fund it. Like we had no idea of what is a VC. When he entered and told us that they are willing to give us $4 million, we were still calculating how much that translate into rupees, right? And from that as a situation to they trusting us that they can trust these kids and still give them $4 million was also our probably the intent or the ability which we were able to think it down the line, that how do we want to spend that money, right? It is not essentially that we will always talk about numbers in terms of market share or how much what is our customer acquisition cost, but since for some part, linking back to what Rohit and Sai were also mentioning, that if you are in a bootstrap mode for some time, you start realizing the value of money. And that is a perfect start. I'm sure Sujit also would have seen those days at Flipkart and Uran, because when you are at that bootstrap, you understand the real value of how do you want to spend it. And when you get that skill, it becomes easy when you've got those funding, where you link back from the consumer that how can you give them right value, and the entire chain of events or connecting the dot backwards, you will try to make sure you'll make efficient use of that. We have been lucky to be in a category which of course is a high margin category, but if you look back of how things we have done, it is high margin because we made sure that each and every supply chain element, we will control that. If we would have given that to anybody else, we would have been like any other optical store where consumer is not winning and the company is not winning, but the middlemen are winning. So the idea was that how can you create a stack where you first make the consumer winner and then backtrack everything to make sure that you make things efficient.
Oh, absolutely. Sujit, if I can come to you, as much as it is about utilizing funds, it's, when a VC comes in, you also have to give up significant control as well. So talk to us about how do you navigate, in your early days, not give up too much power, but also at the same time, get the kind of value that a good VC or a good investor will come with.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Ruchi. One has to understand VC is not interested into taking the control and power. They wanted to create the value. Only when company is doing fine, they support more and more. When it's not doing fine, definitely exceptional rights they use sometime. And I'm saying that that's the exception. Um, so you need capital. What I'm trying to say, there are VCs and there is specialization because lots of VC have good exposure in some of the sectors. And definitely we can see their portfolio companies, their global presence and all. Through which definitely you should, if you have an option. So first you need money, then who all are giving money? And then in that, like Rohit said, the color of money, I say the quality of money. Like quality is very important because you need lots of validation in your early days. Product validation, am I thinking right? What kind of people I should hire? How I should think about product? How first what's it's a product or idea? Because sometimes it's not about product. Just to validate idea, you don't need product. You can do manual, am I right? Go in Excel sheet, just show to your potential customer, are they happy or not? Those ideas are fine or not. So all those things are intelligence and judgment of founders. And I always see investors are enablers rather than they are hurdle. But at the same time, you are controlling lots of stuff, growth, how to utilize your capital. Sometimes you push somewhere, which kind of team you are hiring, whom you are giving what, balancing the culture, balancing the practices, processes.
Right.
And like I must say that like this panel is also about unicorn founder, and definitely everybody are in the journey of not we are in the middle of something, not even middle. I think in my business model, I am in the starting point. So people see that, hey, this much of valuation. I always see create value. Valuation happens. I think don't chase valuation. I think create values. What are those values? Deep into market trade, gaps, spot those opportunities.
Right.
And also, I must say that the best of the business idea when you complete in one line, rather than you are taking a paragraph to just explain what's my business idea. Means I also see that in my experience, longer the explanation, the smaller the potential.
While you were talking about, of course, the kind of value that an investor comes up with, there are also news reports coming in that Narayan Murthy could very well be picking up a minority stake in Udaan. Care to talk about that as well?
I think we are not commenting on that. As we say that we are not commenting. But Narayan Murthy he's an inspiration to all our generation. Am I right? We always respect that. Doesn't matter he's an investor or not. We always seek advice, inspirations from him. And I'm looking. I also tried several times to connect with him. So I think the money is secondary. What I'm trying to say, Narayan Murthy guidance is very important for all of us because he has a tremendous learning in his journey.
Right. While you were talking, Sujit, I also saw Rohit nodding his head as well. Rohit, Sujit made a lot of valid points while he was talking about that one must not focus on that when an investor or a VC comes in, then we'll have to give up too much control. It's also about the balancing act. So talk to us about when you're in your early days, why should one not be chasing valuations? Because at the end of the day, it is a rat race, right? Everybody would want to become a unicorn. I mean, everybody would want to get the kind of money, everybody would want to get big investors, big names funding you.
But I think, Ruchi, founders are the ones who opt out of the rat race by definition, right? So I think to call founders in the rat race is sort of slightly doing injustice to the passion and hustle they bring to the table. I do believe, look, the markets fair price everything at a point in time, right? Now you can always argue in any market. For example, today there's a lot of debate going on globally. Are valuations too rich? Is there too much money chasing too little investable assets? And that's not just India, globally, right? Now, who knows, right? When markets went down to 25,000 in March of last year, how many of us actually went in deep into the markets to buy stocks? Very few. So we
Right.
are driving it. It was so. I genuinely I'm quite curious about any kind of blanket statements which says everybody's chasing value, because that assumes that there are a set of idiots on both sides, right? On the founder side and as well as the investor side. That's just not true. There are very intelligent people whom we can argue with. We can take calls, but they're just good people all around who are putting a check on. Now, some companies will at some point in time will always seem outrageously priced, but there still is a reason, because the person who's putting the money behind it wants the return. Now let's and look at VCs, right? They can't raise their next funds if they don't deliver to the LPs.
True.
Actual exits. So my own sense is that in the short run, markets oscillate a lot and company valuations oscillate a lot. There is so much speculation externally about a company's valuation. But in the long run, the wheat does get separated from the chaff very clearly.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and I go back to what Sujit said, for young people watching this, is while it is good to sort of enjoy valuation stories, etc., as you will do a good soap opera, right? But don't get lost there. There's a consumer out there, there's a product to be built, there are people to be hired, there is a market to be chased. I think that's where the attention should lie.
Absolutely. Rohit, but that's of course one part of it. I also now want to talk about how should one be maneuvering uncertainties. COVID, of course, was a big shocker for the entire startup ecosystem. At OYO, you guys hustled a lot, struggled a lot during COVID period. This was the time where we saw a number of layoffs coming in, you guys exiting loss-making ventures as well, a certain amount of backlash from angry hoteliers as well. How did you maneuver through those times, and where do we stand now as we're on the throes of a second COVID wave?
Yeah. So Ruchi, this deserves a book. I'll try and summarize in 5 sentences. Right. One same point last year. One thing we clearly recognized as a team is that nobody has a playbook for this. This hasn't happened in 100 years. So to look externally for answers was just a waste of time, right? But what was extremely valuable was, one, weekly we were in touch with partners and customers, weekly, the entire senior management team, because patterns were changing very rapidly. That helped, right? Second, take the tough decisions fast, but do it with a lot of empathy. That empathy could be visible externally sometimes may not be visible, but doesn't mean the empathy doesn't need to come into play, because people who have seen the empathy know that it's a tough time, but they are not tough people, right? They're working with. Third is, when there's storm in the seas, the fishermen repair their nets. They don't waste their time, right? Because they know the storm will subside and they have to go and fish again. So for the first 3 or 6 months, I think we built more products and tech than probably we did last 2 years, right? And we sort of doubled down on saying these are the things we always wanted to do, never had time. We will invest and go behind this. And that, just to give you a sense, our conversion from call center to chat happened 85% when we opened up within two weeks. Those are 2-year milestones sometimes in normal course of thinking, right? 4 is, in terms of protecting the core, be very clear on what the core is and keep at it. And last but not the least, over communicate like hell, right? So Ritesh does weekly town halls today, right? Even today, every week he has a weekly all hands. I would have done 100 plus town halls in the last 1 year. As a company leadership, I think the number is more than 500, right? And external, internal, etc. I think where we stand today, I think much stronger company than we were 1 year back, right? Much stronger. I don't mean it only in the sense of valuation or money or things like that, but just product, tech. It's a very large market. 200 million hotels and homes globally. We have 30 great products to solve customer and partner problems, and we just keep building on that. So I think that's how they make it. Sounds all logical right now, but if I were to say that we navigated it logically and with a plan and with a 1-year roadmap, I think you won't believe me, and neither should you, right? It was very chaotic. It was very, very troublesome.
You guys also turned EBITDA positive as well during this time. So, having said that, as I said, we're once again on the throes of a second COVID wave. Do you fear that that could once again play a spoil sport?
It is definitely a concern the way the cases are rising in India. But now, having seen the movie once at least, we know the movie also has a ending which is in 3 hours, right? And that I'm quite confident, especially if the vaccination goes on. My only urge is not knowing the exact supply of vaccines, etc. But having worked in healthcare for many, many years prior to OYO, is the more segments of population which can get vaccinated at the fastest pace ever seen in human history, right, is something that we can achieve. We are in the middle of elections. We run the best election process in the whole world, right? We don't recognize it, but that's true. I think that kind of machinery, if deployed on vaccination, is what the country needs right now.
Absolutely. In fact, Amit, if I can come to you, you also ventured out into the offline stores via the franchising model in a big way before COVID. COVID, of course, played a spoil sport in that entire process. Is there now, once again, a fear that just when things were getting back on track, there's a second wave that's there to haunt us?
No, it is there, and our first concern was always that our employees should be safe. So we took that call. But we are also in a category where if there is a stomach ache, we can still take a medicine. But if you're out of your glasses, you just can't see. So I think the first 2 months of COVID last year, we were the only company in the country which were supplying glasses, and not only to consumers but a lot of health workers, like anybody who is in need at that moment, and nobody could have supplied that time in India. So we took that probably that pioneer lead, that moment, which really helped us even pre-COVID and post-COVID. What, as Rohit mentioned, a lot of playbook is already there. We know how to tackle this. Safety is a concern. What is different between last year and this year is that last year we did not had any infra, like even for a mask wear or basic of how to do things. But this year, I think we know this. So having known this, knowing what is there, we should be precautionary, taking all the precautionary measures, but not stop business, not do lockdowns. At least that is what even my message to the government was when I was talking to representing retail, that if we are doing these lockdowns, it is only getting more people out of work. It is getting probably more hunger in the society than probably what COVID will kill us. So the idea should be that we should be as strict as possible to make sure that the adherence is there. But let's not stop our economy. In fact, use this as an opportunity. While the world is stopping, let us move fast. But yeah, let's adhere to all the possible rules of making sure that the country is safe and sound.
Absolutely. Sujit, if I can come to you, logistically, of course, in the first part of COVID, and now that 1 year has passed, there were a lot of initial problems, hurdles with localized lockdowns. Now that we're seeing a second wave, how are you preparing your systems on the supply side, on the logistics side, to deal with all these kind of challenges, if at all they arise?
So, Ruchi, first of all, definitely it's a concerning the number of cases, the way it's growing. But what it was 1 year back and now, I think there is no comparison. First of all, it was the first time, nobody knows what will going to happen. There are no processes, no systems, things were not, infrastructure haven't been built. Now we have seen that, but the cases are independent, right? Definitely, I see they're not going to have a haphazard kind of decision, say this lockdown, that lockdown. People have the authority, administrations know what to do. In that, definitely governments are focusing on how how to reduce the case, rather than, I clearly see that they are not thinking of lockdown. Definitely, they are giving some of the strong messages. If you see some of the cities, number of cases are growing, but I don't see they are taking decisions which are what it was 1 year back.
Right.
But at the same time, definitely there are concerns, because concerns are like how the wholesale market, if you see the way how to regulate people, because wholesale, if you gone to some of the wholesale markets or any of the market, the crowds are so much there, it's very hard to do the social distancing. So finding out how to regulate and all, I think that's the problem statement rather the lockdown. So our concerns are not that which is go, and like Rohit was saying that, and everybody knows, every day doing more than 3.5 million vaccination, and government wanted to accelerate that. If you do the math, in next 2 to 3 months, it will be around 30 to 40 crore people will be going to be vaccinated. So another people less than 18 year, another 40-50 crore. So if you'll practically you'll see, this is this only problem of next some few months. That's
Absolutely.
how I see.
So, let me take it across to Sai. Sai, on one hand, we're seeing all your other panelists talk about the kind of struggles that they went through during the COVID period. Yours is one business that really flourished during the time of the pandemic. Talk to us about how that really played out for you. You spoke about how you signed up a lot of top players in their respective fields as well. How has that really played out, and where do you see the gaming sector really heading from here?
Sure. So firstly, I mean that it would definitely did help with tailwinds. It brought the future closer, but yeah, I mean it's not some. I mean it's something that we're not too happy about. I mean we'd be more than happy if things were normal and we just took our own sweet time building our business. I think what happened was that because of the lockdown, I think gaming is one such form of entertainment which is very cognitive, right? It's not unlike movies or unlike content, any other format of content. Gaming is immersive. People participate in it. So that was very, very good for us. And in the fact that we were the largest brand in the country, and we anyhow were preparing for IPL last year. So we were ready with a lot of content. We were ready with a lot of games. We were ready with a lot of marketing collateral as well. So the fact that there was a lockdown, it kind of gave us an opportunity to actually just accelerate the business, and it was true in most parts of the world, right? If you look at it across the world, even in the US, in Europe, in China, most places, content companies, be it OTT players or gaming guys, eventually saw a significant amount of uptick in their business. But I think the key thing was, once things got back to normal, how do you ensure that you retain that growth and you don't go back to the baseline that you were before this entire episode, right? I think for anyone, for most people watching, there will always be black swan events in your company's journey, which can either be very accretive to value or very destructive. I think the thing is, if they are being accretive, just understand that it's not you, it's the situation around you that's giving you this boost, and you should put your head down and figure out how to ensure that you lock in most of that value in the long term. If it is destructive, then in that case, you again have to realize that very little is in your control, and it's the situation around you, and you try and figure out how to protect whatever value you can. I think what I'm trying to get at is that, and I think Sujit, Amit, and Rohit will agree with this, is when you're building a company, there's only 4 or 5 things that are in your control. The other 95 usually are things that are happening around you. So I think you just have to get those 4 or 5 things right.
To you, and let's talk about some of the trends that you saw emerging post the pandemic in terms of when we're seeing recovery now. What are some of the trends that you would be betting on? Digitization, of course, has happened in a big way during this time, and in fact a lot of companies have benefited tremendously. But in your experience, some of the trends that you would be betting on post the pandemic for the startup ecosystem?
Sure. Ruchi, I think, are you asking me? Sorry, I just lost your voice.
The question was for Rohit.
Yeah, Rohit.
Okay. Sorry, Ruchi, that first part wasn't very audible. Look, digitization, big trend for sure. But let me talk a little bit about my industry, because that's what I understand more than others. 3 or 4 big trends we're seeing. One is as soon as COVID comes down, we see a lot of revenge tourism happen, right? It's a nice new term coined in Southeast Asia, but that people just go out very quickly. So the bounce back is quick, and it happens probably very non-seasonal in nature. That's one. The second is we'll see a number of small vacations go up, right? Which is people taking 2 to 3 day break 8, 10, 12 times a year, rather than just 1 or 2 long breaks. Third is very unique work from home plus school from anywhere models allowing vacations while you are sort of living somewhere else, right? So those are the trends in our space. But the only other trend overall for the startup ecosystem, apart from digitization, which is a massive trend, is I think the work from anywhere has been accepted globally, and that will create industries of its own.
Right.
Because truly talent is now borderless in the truest possible sense. And I think that creates a very different labor markets globally, which
Right.
I don't think everybody has seized fully on what it means. Lastly, the amount of climate change data we got generated during the lockdown, I'm sure many scientists and startup people are studying that for long-term advantages. So those are two which I could think of. But
Rohit, before we let you go, just last few questions. Do you also think that the year 2021 is going to belong to Indian startups? We're hearing about a lot of them hitting the IPO street. What about Oyo?
look, I think Ritesh has said this in the past, and that's how I think we are well on our way of making the company ready for public markets. I think that's the way to put it, in the sense that systems, processes, governance, quality of business, everything should be ready. And IPO is a matter for the board to decide, not for me to comment. In terms of Indian startup ecosystem, absolutely, I think there's a lot of energy, but I think we should always be on our toes and keep ourselves honest by comparing to what other great nations have done in this space, and so that we know that the headroom is quite large for us to grow and not sort of get swayed by catch lines and sentiments only. So, for example, product-led startups in India, new IP, right? Things which are riskier to build, startups in the deep health space, not health tech, health space, R&D. Those are still quite nascent. I think we have a long way to go there.
Sai, I know you have a meeting in the next 2 minutes. Some of the key trends that you see in the year 2021.
Well, I think work from anywhere. I think we as a company have embraced that fully now. Work from anywhere. I think the second thing that will really take off is basically this entire philosophy of what do you call lesser working hours. I think 4-day weeks or alternating 4-day weeks, I think a lot of change will happen to work. People will still go to office. I don't think it's not that people aren't going to go to office, but it'll become very flexible, right? A lot of people will pick and choose how they want to work. I think that's something that's going to change a lot.
Sujit, if I can come to you, we were talking about how the year 2021 is going to be the year of IPOs for the startup ecosystem. Talk to us about Udan's plans.
Definitely, Ruchi, it's just a little over 4.5 years. As I said, definitely we wanted to do the IPO, but I think it's not like we are IPO ready and all. We are in the process of finding and building those capability which suits the ecosystem, and definitely we will think in next 1 to 2 years when to do that IPO. I think that's definitely we wanted to do it. As you also asked, in India, there are lots of opportunity has been unlocked during this pandemic because people have realized there are billion plus users, and most of them are on internet. People are all the global as well as local companies are realizing that that's a potential. So various kind of ideas which are more India centric, not the copying from any of the global pattern, those things are happening. I think we'll see lots of divergence in the idea space and back of the infrastructure digitizations and all. I think that's how we see that. It can be around commerce, it can be around edutech, it can be around fintech. The lots of things will start happening in commerce space, in B2B space. All those things are bound to happen and happening already.
Amit, before we wrap up this discussion, some of the trends that you see in the year 2021, and talk to us about when you're hitting the IPO markets as well.
So I think the trends which I see are very different. I of course see people coming back to office. I've been a little vocal in a different way. I feel that people has been a lot of employees have been missing the collaboration because the initial few months was a lot of resilience and people were collaborating well. But for any organization to scale, you need collaborative ownership. So I think there will be that coming in. Apart from that, of course, it gives us independence, like what every panelist was saying, that we can hire from anywhere. What it also enables for us is that we can hire a lot of housewives and people who want to do part-time jobs, like a lot of women who are managing baby or who want to do 2 jobs at a time, but different genres of. So that will start coming in, which is a little different, but we'll start hearing these aspects of employment in the near future. For IPO, we see IPO as very different. We are currently at 15 million consumers. We want to get to IPO when we are 100 million consumers, because we firmly believe that at the end of the day, IPO is just a validation of who your consumers are, and the consumer should love you. So if you are at a scale where 100 million consumers are loving you, there can't be a better blockbuster IPO where the consumers who are buying your shares are also buying your spectacles. So what our take is. It should take another 3.5 years, but that is what our journey is from now to enable that another that journey of 15 million users to 100 million users. Yeah.
Rohit, my last question for you. While we're talking about revenge tourism, which are some of the destinations that you're seeing picking up during this time, now that we're seeing a bit of a recovery coming in?
I think across the board. So one thing we've seen is top 20 cities, in-city stays. We are a private space cramped society, right? And that creates opportunities in city which are very different. But more than that, anything which is more doable with road travel. So destinations around large metro centers, those are doing very well. Plus the usual favorites are coming back very strong. Goa, Coorg, all these places. Whenever we see COVID cases go down, these centers just boom, right? So, and largely the entire international spend on tourism is getting directed towards India, because nothing is going out today, almost zero, right? So that is creating, and that will continue for a year at least, where I don't see international travel open up in a very convenient way for a significant time to come.
Okay, all right. On that note, it was us, of course, wrapping up. Rohit, thank you very much for that. Sujit, Amit, the entire team of SRCC, we all now know where to head as we're now talking about revenge tourism. And of course, just hoping that the year 2021 is a great one for startups and, of course, budding entrepreneurs as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our panelists, Mr. Amit Chaudhary, Mr. Rohit Kapoor, Mr. Sai Srinivas, Mr. Sujit Kumar, and Ruchi Bhatia for moderating this session. Thank you, ma'am. Your respective life journeys inspired us and every budding entrepreneur. The careful insights about entrepreneurship, e-commerce, and business were informative. Thank you very much for joining with us at SRCC Business Conclave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruchi. Bye.